Ready. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us here at City Hall and at home virtually. This is the September 14th, 2020 Dunwoody City Council meeting. I'm going to do a little sound check. If everybody can hear me, okay? And without objection, I call this meeting to order. Everyone is present. Councilmember Seconder, can you lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please?
At this meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us. And above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce our newest officer, Bailey Henson. We're excited to have Bailey join our department. She recently graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of North Georgia. And she's the second officer we've hired who's gone through their program. So they come out of college, not only with their degree, but they're certified as a police officer as well. So we're excited about that. And one of the things that I think I found most interesting about Bailey when she was going through the hiring process and interview was she had a heart for service. So she wanted to help other people. And so we're excited. We think she's going to fit in really well with our culture here at the Dunwoody Police Department. And so we're happy to have her and ready for you to swear her in.
Sure. I will tell you where it is. Right here. Okay. Welcome to Dunwoody. I'm going to give you your oath of office now. So if you will please raise your right hand. On my honor, I,
Bailey Henson,
do solemnly swear and affirm that
do solemnly swear and affirm that
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Georgia,
the Constitution of the State of Georgia,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Dunwoody, Georgia.
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Dunwoody, Georgia.
I am not the holder of any unaccounted for public money
I am not the holder of any unaccounted for public money
due to the state or any political subdivision
due to the state or any political subdivision
or authority thereof.
or authority thereof.
I am not the holder of any office of trust under the government of the United States,
I am not a holder of any office of trust under the government of the United States,
any other state,
any other state,
or any foreign state which I am,
or any foreign state which I am,
by the laws of the state of Georgia,
by the laws of the state of Georgia,
prohibited from holding.
prohibited from holding.
I am otherwise qualified to hold the office of a peace officer
I am otherwise qualified to hold the office of a peace officer
according to the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia.
according to the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia.
I will faithfully follow the legal rules, regulations, policies, and procedures
I will faithfully follow the rules, policies, and procedures
of the Dunwoody Police Department in the city of Dunwoody, Georgia.
of the Dunwoody Police Department of the city of Dunwoody, Georgia.
Congratulations. The Dunwoody eagerly await meeting you. Many of them are watching at home, and we are thrilled to have you join us. And so, picture.
do it free first, and then she's got the family.
Family here, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
One, two, three.
If your family wants to come up,
Yeah, come on, up, y'all can get the
A
picture.
girl named I was gonna keep my hand picked out baby. Three boys.
I was gonna say, never,
Jennifer, can you-
that one was always on deck, yeah.
Her name, even how she spelled it, is our girl name. We never had a girl. You got a granddaughter. They'll name her baby.
You can lie, these are.
I love that name. Never got to use it. So I'll remember her name.
Okay. All right.
One, two, three. Again. Congratulations.
You sitting there for the duration?
Jay, are we good on sound? Okay. Ginger, are we ready to start public comments? I'm gonna start with the people that are present here.
Okay.
Waiting for your voice, so I look up.
I'm sorry. I'm here. Yes.
Okay. Cheryl Summers.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you all can hear me.
Yes, so lean in as close.
Great. Look, I just want to request that council approve number 5 on the agenda tonight. That's a new contract to construct the sidewalk and bicycle lanes on Killing Mill Road between North Peachtree and Womack Road. As you all know, we really need that sidewalk. There's been a lot more use of that ever since this pandemic shut down. People are walking, riding, jogging. I mean, when we had the the speed trailer there one day, I actually saw it catch a few joggers on the road. They were going 6 or 7 miles an hour. So yeah, that is in high demand. Furthermore, that sidewalk will allow a route to school for kids in the area because they will now be able to get safely to Dunwoody Elementary School, the high school, the college, and down to the middle school. So we really, really need it. Furthermore, I ask that you start the construction on Killing Mill Road while we don't have the traffic problem that we normally have. It would be a good idea to do that now instead of later when the college is back in session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Summers. All right, Ginger.
We did have our first register is Richard Warnecki, and I
Yes.
believe he's here present.
Mr. Warnecki, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Rick Warnecki, and I live at 4996 Tilly Mill Road. You, John Hennigan, sat at my dining room table and admitted that I had a lot of construction damage and there was never an easement or permission to work on my property. You, Pam Talmadge, sat at my dining room table and admitted that there was a lot of damage from the construction without any easement. I don't know you, but you sat there too, Tom Lambert. You sat there, Mayor Deutsch, with your nose in the phone reading your emails because all of you only showed up because I got it on WSB Channel 2 News. I have 6 years of letters from your hack Riley that say, I don't have to hire a lawyer, okay? It says we're gonna have a hearing to appoint a special master and then we go to a jury trial. For 6 years, I've been taking those letters, and you know for 6 years I've been complaining. I blame you most because I know you're a good man. I blame you because I know you're a good woman from working on the parades with you. I don't know you, so don't take that wrong. Okay? The city of Dunwoody, last election, sent somebody out to knock my security cameras off the street. I didn't catch that. I didn't realize till a few days later. Then the city of Dunwoody sent somebody out to take a cable that I complained to you for years that was hanging off a telephone pole, and they took that cable and they manipulated it out so it was really dangerous. And they intertwined that with one of the cables I had on one of those orange barrels out front, which I always admitted was part of my free speech. They were my property, and they were well marked and they were legal. Mailbox constantly get hit. People constantly wreck their cars on that elevated curb that's not marked. I put the barrels out and it stopped. They served a purpose. So with what you don't know till tonight is Liberty Mutual claims adjusters were in my house when the city of Dunwoody sent the guy out to cut the cable on the barrel and cut the chain on the other barrel, okay? And he parked his truck way down the road, didn't realize we were watching, didn't realize I was home, and I had no notice on this. Then he came out a couple hours later and they took the 2 barrels. When I called the city manager, he said, well, there was this cable that was really dangerous, okay? You had to trespass on my property to get that cable, to mix it with this other cable. Can't do it by hand. You
30 seconds remaining.
Heavy duty, okay? And then the city, when I called the city manager, he told me what it was. It was such an incredible hazard, they had to take the barrels, except the one barrel was on a chain and had nothing to do with it. And it was such an incredible hazard a few weeks before the election that you had to cut the grass that I refused to cut because the ruts are so deep, you've seen them, you can't get a lawnmower through it. There's rocks out there, there's new manholes and all. Then I called the city manager and he told me, oh, it's a dangerous cable. It was so cotton picking dangerous, you cut the grass, you took my barrels, and you left the cable. You left the cable. And then I called the city manager and the cover-up started up. That idiot Lemoyne showed up 4 days later with a notice of violation. I was home. If he knocked on the door, I would have come out. Okay, if it was a hazard, I would have done something. My neighbor on the north side hasn't cut her grass in 9 years, okay? I got a notice of violation and they're saying I'm gonna get hit with $1,000 in 24 hours if I don't cut the grass, okay? And then the other thing that you know happened is my 2 neighbors, little old ladies, one handicapped, they were forced out of their homes because of raw sewage running in the house. And I got one more thing, I'm sorry, okay? So when I made an issue of it before the election, when you were stealing my barrels because it didn't look good for the elections, the city cut deals with those 2 little old ladies who got forced out of their houses. They changed the topography, which always used to drain to the street. Now it drains to the back, and their septic systems are overflowing to all the neighbors around them. That's the competence of your engineers and all. And now your fool Riley has got you in court, and on a technicality, he wants to have the whole thing thrown out. This guy could go down to Florida and entertain every politician in the city of Atlanta, but he can't drive 2 miles to my house to look at the damages, okay? I need to meet with somebody, not Riley, and get my house fixed, and I'm still standing for my neighbors. They probably signed something they don't understand, okay? And now I got raw sewage running in my backyard, flood my garage, and I can't use my garage. You need to do something. Sorry. Thank you.
The next person on the list is Sharon Frank. I'm not certain what the first and last name are. I do not see them on the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
The next one is Bill Grossman. He is also not on the Zoom meeting. I'm not sure if he's in person.
No, he's not in person.
Okay. So we do have 3 people with their hands raised at this time.
Okay.
The first one is Jim Williams.
Okay.
Jim Williams, you can unmute yourself and speak. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And this is the first Zoom meeting I've been to for City Council. It's pretty interesting. Listen, I was saddened to see the Austin Elementary School on tonight's agenda for a demolition contract. It's difficult to see another Dunwoody asset torn down without complete input from Dunwoody residents, nonprofits, and businesses regarding possible uses. Speaking as a resident and in no formal capacity, I know that several of our nonprofits would welcome the opportunity to participate in the discussion regarding usage. Dunwoody Nature Center is always seeking additional classroom space. And what a great opportunity with this facility so close by. And the Dunwoody Preservation Trust has a goal of having a Dunwoody History Museum in place and already has plenty of historical artifacts to use and no place to show them. Spruill Arts is in need of additional space, but has limitations because the Stage Door Players and the Chattahoochee Weavers Guild is utilizing part of their space. And the Chattahoochee Weavers Guild, I've heard them say many times that they've got some large looms that they'd love to set up, and what an ideal space to do that at the Austin Elementary School. And that's just a few of the possibilities. There's other nonprofits out there that don't even have current usage agreements that I'm sure would be very interested, in addition to possibility of businesses and so forth. So I think that it would be great to have some community input on that. The cost of rehabilitation, whatever it is significantly lower than the cost of new construction, which will never happen anyway. So it'd just be nice to see this demolition vote deferred and have a stakeholder discussion regarding the potential use of the school. So I really appreciate you listening. I know that a lot of times these decisions are already made, but please reconsider your vote and consider the deferral of this demolition contract. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Next, we have Danny Ross. You should be able to unmute yourself. Actually, it is not allowing me to unmute without promoting him to a panelist. Okay. Mr. Danny Ross, you should be able to unmute yourself and speak at this time.
Are you there, Mr. Ross?
Okay, so up next we have Ellen Holloway. We'll give Mr. Ross a moment to try to get his app up. Ms. Holloway, you should be able to unmute yourself and speak at this time.
Hello, can you hear me? Dear Mayor and Council, with my backyard backing to the westernmost edge of the village, I have been actively following the village overlay and rezoning plans since shortly after buying my house 20 months ago. The negotiated buffer as passed by the Planning Commission, consisting of mostly 130-foot plus 20-foot transition yard on the westernmost edge of the village, allows me and many of my neighbors to support the whole of the village rezoning plan that otherwise has elements that are problematic, such as the westernmost road and buildings of 3, 4, and 5 stories tall and high density. As buffer neighbors, our family succumbs to intense and early noise as dumpsters are emptied, yappy dogs await their owner's return, traffic jams snarl, and intense lights guard the night. The established forest buffer that prior residents fought for and were assured by zoning regulations would remain, not only makes living here tolerable, it makes it one of the best parts of Dunwoody life. The wildlife, the deer bring joy to those who see them. The stream with its water-worn ravine provide protections from flooding beyond the 75-foot stream buffer. The dense forest absorbs at least some of the noises of urban life, and the distance from those sounds makes it manageable, at least most of the time. Any less buffer does not offer the distance, the density of the buffer, nor the cover height needed for us to successfully live beside 3- and 4-story buildings. History shows us that life and businesses on the buffer isn't an either or, but rather a both and. Our community, city, and businesses can both thrive with the buffer mostly intact and support successful, bustling businesses in a unique live-work setting that is an inviting and thriving city center. The only plan that satisfies both and offers a unique feature for the village is the plan as approved by the Planning Commission. I am thankful that city staff and the council are taking their time to carefully consider current zoning regulations and thoroughly research the long history of the buffer. My neighbors and I anxiously await the opportunity to meet with the council and staff in a working session to finalize the details. I look forward to the day when the village is revitalized into an active, bustling city center, peacefully separated by the beautiful wooded buffer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ellen. How are we doing, Ginger?
Okay, so Mr. Ross, if you would like to try to speak again, you should be able to unmute yourself at this time and speak. Okay, so he still does not appear to be able to unmute and speak, but we do have one more hand raised. If you'll give me one moment to get back over there. We have Amy Little. If you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You have 3 minutes, please.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I wanted to thank City Council for the last meeting where they let us speak and address the issue of the road terminating through the Colonial Pipeline buffer to my property line. Thank you for addressing that and removing it from the maps and noting that. I just wanted to let you know that there's still very, very strong interest from our neighborhood and the branches regarding the buffer between our neighborhoods and now also including the church. So we appreciate the additional meetings that you all are having to address this, including the retreat and the relook in October. We were able to go and pull additional maps that DeKalb County, I know, is working to provide. I just wanted to let you know that the interest is still very, very high from our neighborhoods to continue to pursue the maximum 150-foot buffer. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand in the application. Mr. Ross is still raising his hand, but unable to speak. I do not see any other hands.
You could dial
You
it.
can dial in on the Zoom number.
Yes, Mr. Ross, if you would like to participate in the future Zoom meeting, there is a phone number on the agenda that you could call into. There will be another public comment at the end of the council meeting.
Can you see it, wasn't it?
It was on the screen.
What he wants to talk about, I suspect, is before the thing. Do you want to give him 1 second? You can move on to consent agenda, and then if he shows back on as a phone call, Ginger, can you let us know, please?
Yes, I will do that.
All right, on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments for staff on the items that are on the consent agenda? So go ahead.
I do appreciate the amendment for the looking at additional stormwater on Chandler Dunwoody, expressly by those concerns of the local residents along there. So I appreciate us doing that, and let's hope that contractor gets to work and builds those sidewalks on Silly Mill and takes our money.
Right. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Go ahead.
What is the timeline?
What is the timeline, like, once the contract is out for the Tilly Mill sidewalk, since we had somebody from the public ask?
Michael Smith, can you answer that?
Yes, as soon as it's approved, we'll execute the contract, which usually takes about 2 weeks, and we would hope to have contractor ready to mobilize by mid-October.
And what do you think the duration of the project will be?
It will probably be next summer before everything's completed and final paving is done.
Okay, thank you.
John, go ahead.
Michael, can you give us an update as far as the landscaping, how that works, if there's bushes that need to be removed, replaced, and what kind of landscaping do we go in for each of the residents? Are we talking to them now? What's the transition for that type of process?
Yeah, mostly it will be restoring ground cover, sod, grass, things like that. Where most of the work is occurring, there's also power lines on that side, so there won't be much opportunity to plant new trees in there. But we do have some money set aside outside of this contract at the end of the project to do any additional landscape enhancements after as the project's completed.
All right, so long story short, though, you are talking to the residents to make sure that they know what's going on in the process of how it's all going to operate.
Yes, a lot of the discussion about how the site would be restored occurred when we were negotiating the easements.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. The motion, please.
Move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Moved by John, second by Jim. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Mayor, moving on to the business items now. Number 6, we have a resolution appointing a member to serve on the Alcohol License Review Board.
Oh, that's me. Okay. I am pleased to recommend Sana Chris, who is an attorney, with the Federal Trade Commission, and has a very impressive bio. I hope you all had time to see it, to serve on the Alcohol Review Board to complete the duration of Ms. Wingate's term. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Move to approve.
Moved by Jim, second by Pam. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous, Sharon.
And number 7 is a resolution appointing a member to serve on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mayor Deutsch.
Okay. And I am pleased to present Tara. I'm gonna mess up the last name. Hello, Tara. And to serve on the zoning Board of Appeals to fill the term of Councilwoman Harris. Tara is a longtime resident of Dunwoody who has been eager and waiting for a chance to serve. And she has a background in administration and business, and I think she'll be a great asset. Any questions?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by John, second by Jim. Any discussion? All in?
Question. They receive specific training
They do, they do, they do.
based on a certain time.
Yes, yes, they receive, it's a good question. They receive training.
Very powerful.
Yes, they receive training, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Madam Mayor, can we check to see if there's any public commenters ready to come back to us
Yeah,
before we move on?
please. Any luck?
If you are on the phone and you would like to join for public comment, raise your hand. You can star 9 if you're on the phone and would like to raise your hand in the app. I do not see any hands raised.
I'll talk about it because he's written us emails. Okay, Sharon.
All right, number 8 under business items is a contract award for the demolition of the former Austin Elementary School. Brent Walker.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me tonight. The city put out a bid back in July for the demolition of the Austin school site. We had to postpone the bid a few weeks to ensure that DeKalb County removed all of their equipment and furnishings from the facility to ensure that we got an appropriate bid for removal of the building, excuse me, itself, and not all of their furniture. So we closed the bid on August 28th. The bids are in front of you in your packet. Complete Demolition Services was the low bid at $279,000. This price will include all abatement of the asbestos that was found in the building, the main school building, the gymnasium, and the tennis courts facility. And I can share my screen and show an aerial of the building. So you see the main building outlined in red and the smaller white roof building.
Not shared yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then that doesn't help you at all. Let me try that again. There you go. Is that there now?
It's starting. Okay, now it's there. Okay.
There you go. So the main building is outlined in red. The gymnasium is outlined in red also, but with a white roof. And the blue rectangles are the former trailers, but that is where the trailer concrete pad was, which we assume was a former tennis court, which will also be demolished as all part of this price. We'll maintain the asphalt parking lots for now, remove some of the unnecessary sidewalk, and maintain the 2 playground facilities that are on site and rehabilitate those for public use. The intent is to grass the area for now, hopefully be able to have some play fields out there in the interim until we can develop a full master plan for this site through community outreach and survey data. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have at this time.
Okay. Questions, discussion?
I've got plenty of discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is a decision that really council made a year and a half ago at our annual planning retreat in 2019. And it was not a decision that we came to lightly. It was not a decision we came to from an uninformed standpoint. For me personally, I've got a background in a previous life. I was a registered professional engineer and did, our firm designed mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems for commercial buildings, and this would have been well within the milieu that I worked in. So I'm familiar with what I'm looking at here. And I'm here to tell you that this building continues to be in terrible shape. We've had folks coming to us saying, oh, well, it was suitable for a school to send our kids to. You weren't getting the emails we were from parents. It was not suitable for kids. We were getting emails all the time up to the end from Austin parents asking us to do something, which there was very little we could do because that's the school system's responsibility. But the school was in terrible shape towards the end there for the children. We offered, if the school system wanted to use this for elementary school swing space, we offered it to them with the condition that they bring it up to some kind of a decent standard well beyond where it was at in its last days, as Austin. And they are unwilling to do it. Now, getting back to that decision on the demo in March of 2019 at our planning meeting, staff had our facility consultants, comprehensive program services, perform a building condition assessment on Austin. They looked at every major system in the building. Every major, and I'm talking HVAC, plumbing, electrical, life safety, fire alarm, paving, everything. There was no system, pretty much every system was poor. The best systems were at the low end of fair. So we're the building is just a mess. The estimate to bring the building up to a decent standard was $16 million. I repeat, $16 million. We just don't have that kind of money. The building is not the layout we want for the functions that folks have proposed for it. It's just the wrong thing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if we were to not demo this building, it would be a white elephant, and that would be poor stewardship of the citizens' assets and resources. It would be to not knock this thing down. So there you have it.
Does anyone else have any?
So I'm not quite done. That facility report I have forwarded to the city clerk, and I asked that that report be made part of the minutes for this item, so that if anybody wants to see that report, it'll be, it's available to the public. Thank you, Lynn.
Anybody else? Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Brent. I have a couple of questions in the sense of community involvement and review of the building. Jim's basically touched on a lot of it, but can you give us an overview of what community nonprofits you may have talked to and the utilization possibility for those spaces?
Sure. We discussed a lot of the uses of this building as we were going through the art center concepts for rehabilitating the art facility and library space. The three nonprofits and the library system were all part of that discussion of either all staying in one location or splitting those organizations up, utilizing Alston as a potential site, or rehabilitating the site we have at the library facility. Pretty much in unison, they all felt that being in one location provided more synergy to the arts instead of splitting them up. Also, just the cost of rehabilitating this facility, as Councilman Reithighter mentioned, versus rehabilitating what we have at the art center where we currently have them. It didn't make sense to have to rehabilitate two facilities, basically what it comes down to. The other portion and discussion of it was that Sproul has from the very beginning stated that they had no desire to move to Alston Elementary School. They enjoyed being where they were, and if they wanted a new facility, they wouldn't want to trade one old school for another old school, in their opinion. Certainly, the Alston school site could have been renovated into something else, but again, to Councilman Reithighter's point, it would have been an exorbitant cost to honestly get us right back where we are in another school facility, trying to turn it into something else. So there wasn't a lot of desire other than possibly the Chattahoochee Handweavers Guild that needs a little more space. They would have happily moved their looms over there, but it just didn't seem practical with the cost to do the rehabilitation.
Great, thank you. Can you tell me on the demolition, we're taking out a great deal of impervious surface area. Tell me about the grading plan for that property. There are a number of single family residences that directly abut this. Tell me about the grading. Is there going to be water retention? Is there going to be ponding? Is there going to be mosquitoes? What are we doing in the sense of the grading plan for this property?
So we'll see what, going into these things sometimes is there are some unknowns as to what the topography will look like once you remove the building. There's a lot of wall work underground, which we'll have to peel back. Once that's done, we will probably attempt to get a 3-to-1 slope in most places. There may be a few areas that have a 2-to-1 slope, but we'll slope all those cuts where the building is removed and grass them. Certainly, if there's any low spots that do pond water, we'll come out there and address that. We'll grade it, we'll make it drain properly. My intent is to try to get it to a usable space with a crown field that can be grassed and utilized for our programs and for the general public to be able to have another place to play in the interim until we can do a master plan and determine what the eventual usage of the facility will be.
All right, well, that sounds great. I just want to make sure as far as the grading that we're not leaving open water retention for the neighbors to deal with mosquitoes. So that is, sounds like that's part of your plan.
That's correct.
Final question. Can you assure me that there's been rodent removal as part of the demolition?
There will be prior to the demolition taking place. We will be taking our exterminator out there to put trap poison boxes throughout the facility to do that mitigation before we do the demolition.
All right. And again, in the past, we've taken buildings down, maybe before cityhood, we've taken buildings down, let's say the old hospitals, and there was a mass migration of
critters.
Yes, critters. I just want to make sure that, again, we have single family residents that are directly abutting this property, that we are being good stewards and good neighbors and taking care of anything in that property that might affect the quality of life of the residents that live next door.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. No other questions?
Stacy.
Quick question to Brent. What about the outdoor classroom that abuts the church property?
That will remain. We're not doing any demolition in that area. So the garden, the outdoor classrooms, and the 2 playgrounds will remain.
Okay. And just kind of a point to note that there actually is a retention pond on the property that probably will need to be a little bit rehabilitated for it to work properly. And I also want to point out that Councilwoman Talmadge and I met with representatives from the Flame softball group who currently rent space at the gym over in Dunwoody to see if they would be interested in moving to the old Austin gym. And again, the rehabilitation is just too much. And so they are going to remain where they are as well. Joe?
Yeah, Brent, so thank you. I emailed you earlier about just kind of reiterate, we are going to be saving those trees and keeping the existing green space as is. Just wanted to reiterate that with you, Brent.
Yes, that's correct. We fortunately, we've done business with this company before. They removed the dormitory from Brook Run Park in the past. They've done some work for us over at Perimeter Center East and at the Donaldson Bannister property. They're very skilled at what they do. We feel that working with them and developing their site plan and their erosion control plan before demolition, we'll be able to salvage those trees.
I have one final comment. This has been very, I see the analytical reasoning. I look at the budget numbers. I believe and agree with all the comments that have been made from Jim and et cetera, and the due diligence and the cost. What I would have also asked, and I'm leaning towards voting no for this motion just because I would have preferred to have a separate public information open house, inviting the public to hear all this stuff just one final time, have a deep conversation, present everything as is, not just the local nonprofits, but a public meeting open to everyone in Dunwoody to come in and provide their input. And if they were to come up with, oh, I guess what, I just found another nonprofit that they have $8 million in their pocket, they're going to run it. I know that doesn't happen, but I would have preferred to have at least one separate public information meeting to just put all this out in one separate session. Thank you.
What I was going to say has already been said by my teammates up here, but I do want to comment that to go back to what Jim said, these discussions are not new. They have been going on for a while. We've had many tours. We've opened the door to many nonprofits, not just rural, but many that had maybe some interest to see if they had the money to come in and rehabilitate and renovate this building. Unfortunately, it's beyond hope. And I really tried, and we all tried to save maybe a park, a big gym, the cafeteria, you know, sections, the basement, but it's not feasible. So this has been going on for over a year. So there's been lots of opportunities, and I'm glad it's on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
So I want to echo and drive home a point, which is that I, speaking for myself, and multiple council people would have saved any part of that building if we could for community space.
Yes.
But it wasn't doable and it wasn't salvageable. And it's important to drive home the point that we offered it back to the school system to use for temporary classroom space, but they would have had to spend upwards of $5 million to make it habitable. They had children in there up until the point they didn't, but it is not a building that had been well maintained or well cared for. In fact, it's not the oldest elementary school in North DeKalb at all, but it scored the lowest when they were doing that East Blocks funds because the condition was already so poor. So it needed to come down. I'm disappointed. I think we could use a senior center classroom space, for example. I think there's a lot of needs. The evaluation showed that it would be cheaper square footage to rebuild what we needed. Remember, the whole building itself isn't necessarily what we needed. And additionally, when we did the land swap, we promised a park. We said we're going to put a park at Austin. And so the next step is to bring the community together to decide what it is that we want that park to look like. And so I'm disappointed because we need some community indoor space. Did this space have potential? Probably 20 years ago when the school system might have still been maintaining it, maybe 10 years ago, probably not even then. And it's just the cost of rehabbing old space in a building that had rodent infestations and all kinds of things that we don't need to talk about in case people are eating dinner. It was time, it's time. Again, we tried twice. We had it evaluated twice to try to find a way to save part of it, and it just didn't work. So anybody else? Okay,
I moved to.
Move to approve.
Second.
okay, moved by Jim, second by Stacy. Any further discussion? I call the question, signify your support by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Sharon, that was 6-1. Councilman seconder voted no. It was moved by Jim and seconded by Stacy, in case you missed that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Number 9 is approval of replacement computers under the CARES Act. Ginger LePage.
Hello. So we are requesting, as part of the CARES funding, to purchase the replacement computers. We are requesting to use SHI, which is on the state contract. It's a total of 83 laptops. It will replace all of the desktops that we currently have in use, and it will replace some of the computers that we had kind of thrown together at the last minute to make people capable of working in these times. So we are recommending approval.
Okay, any questions for Ginger? I have one quick one, Ginger. So does this also include, I forget what it's called, but the ability for them to work from home totally secure? The technology for that, if there's a name for it.
Yeah.
What?
VPN.
VPNs.
The VPN is part of the firewalls that we do have in place, and we are working to get all of that finalized.
Okay, so this quote is for the laptops only.
That is correct. This is for 83 laptop kits, which will bring us, it will help us get rid of all of the ones that are currently barely functional, and also replace all of the desktops so that everyone would now have the ability to work from home.
Right, okay. Anybody else?
And this is all payable with our CARES effort.
That is correct. And it was part of the budgeted CARES Act that we had put out before.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none,
Move to approve.
moved by Jim. Second. Second by Pam. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, Jim, Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Item 10 is a resolution to surplus a vehicle in the police department. Linda Neighbors.
Good evening. We have a 2012 black Chevy Tahoe that is in poor condition. We are asking that we surplus this vehicle, and we already do have a request or intent of letter to purchase from the Pickens County Sheriff's Office. We feel the fair market value of $5,000 is a good payment, and we were asking for this vehicle to be surplus so we can arrange the sale to Pickens County.
Okay, any questions or discussion?
Procedure.
Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Linda, Joe here. How does it work? Do you publish an announcement? Does that just go out and then different municipalities can bid on that? How does this surplus work in general?
Typically, we can sell them different ways of auction. Of course, you have to strip the vehicles down and to have them sold on the online auction. Administratively, it is more work to do it that way. And, we get a better return if we do offer it to another agency, another jurisdiction, or another agency that's willing to pay the fair market value of it.
So how is this advertised?
Chief, are you here?
Yes, he's here in the room.
So this wasn't advertised. They had bought a vehicle from us previously and was interested if we had another vehicle they could purchase, and we had one, and that's what we had.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. No further.
Anybody else?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second. Moved by Jim, second by Tom. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, signify your support by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to discussion items. Item number 11 is presentation of bicycle facility plan. Michael Smith.
All right, good evening. Let me share my screen here. Everybody see that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. So in the past year, the city council and members have proposed developing a bicycle and pedestrian plan for the city. And connectivity was a major theme that came out of the council retreat earlier this year. And so the staff's been reviewing our plans, and bicycle and pedestrian plans basically consist of two components. There's a list of projects, and then there's usually policy recommendations. And after reviewing the city's various planning documents that have already been previously adopted, we have an extensive bicycle and pedestrian project list. And we also have a good foundation of adopted policies that are commonly recommended in these types of planning documents, such as our complete street policy being one of those. What seems to be missing is a compilation of all these different elements from various plans in one place where you can see how it all fits together. And I think this is something that we can do in-house through a series of presentations to the council, starting tonight with a look at our bicycle facility plans. Going back to the city's original transportation plan that was adopted in 2011, the goal was to build bicycle facilities on the city's primary east-west arterial, Mount Vernon Road, and north-south arterial, the Chamblee-Dunwoody Road, with a few spurs off of that, as shown in blue on the map here that's from that transportation plan. Bicycle facility in that plan was defined as a bike lane or a shared use path, and the facility type was to be determined on a project by project basis. At the time the plan was adopted, there were two roads in the perimeter area that already had existing bike lanes, and those were the only bike lanes we had in the city. The 2011 plan also recommended a number of signed bike routes on the other collector roads throughout the city, and there were opportunities identified for off-road paths shown in green. From that initial direction, the city really has accomplished a lot in the ensuing 9 years. Over 60% of Mount Vernon Road has bike lanes, and the city also now has a nearly continuous north-south route from Roberts Drive to Chamblee-Dunwoody to North Shallowford, with just a couple of gaps. And with the completion of the Georgetown Gateway project that's upcoming, over half of Chamblee-Dunwoody Road itself will have bike facilities on it. Beyond these corridors, the city has completed another 7 miles of bike lanes and three miles of shared use path. The bike lanes that we have shown in blue and the path that's in place shown in green. And looking at all the different types of existing and proposed bicycle facility recommendations, it was apparent we had maps that were rich in information, but it was hard to visualize how the system fit together and how all these types of facilities would really serve the community. So to paint a clearer picture, we use the concept of service areas, which is something you might see in a parks plan, talking about park service areas or looking at fire stations and what areas those serve. So we developed a bike service area. And starting with the existing bicycle facilities we have today, we mapped the areas shown here in purple that would be accessible today, either by riding on a local neighborhood street or on an existing bicycle lane. The areas shown in green on the map are accessible by neighborhood streets or our shared use path system. So, we've gotten a fair amount of coverage for maybe the more comfortable rider that would be comfortable riding in bike lanes in just a small area of the city served by a separated bicycle facility. If we add the projects that are currently funded for construction and getting ready to start or have just started, we'll be filling in a few gaps of areas that would be accessible by bike lanes, and then also converting some areas into separated bike accessible areas. Now that, looking at the progress that we've made and where we are today, we talk about what the plans are for the future. And I mentioned at the beginning that we have an extensive project list when it comes to bicycle and pedestrian projects. The projects come from 8 different plans that have been adopted by the city. The transportation plan is kind of the overarching plan that captures most of these projects that may have been identified in other documents, but our parks plan has a shared use trail network identified. And then we've partnered with the Perimeter CID and Sandy Springs on a couple of studies, the commuter trail master plan for the perimeter area, last mile connectivity, a Hammond Drive corridor study specific to Hammond Drive. And then, of course, we have our other area master plans that also have bicycle facility recommendations. And so if you mapping all of that, again, you can see that we get pretty good coverage of the main roads in the city. And what you'll see is this map's still not exactly clear or apparent to somebody that looks at it that, okay, how does this really serve the residents of Dunwoody? And so going back to that service area concept, if we were to implement all the projects and all these plans, you can see by the end of it, we would have coverage over, say, probably 85% of the city would be accessible either through a neighborhood street or from a separated bicycle facility. Just a note about the biggest area that wouldn't be served on this map is the southeast corner of the city. Our transportation plan actually has a project recommendation to add a separated bicycle facility on on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard Access Road. But because that route is controlled by the DOT and on either end of it, it connects into roads that are in other jurisdictions. We didn't include it on this map, but that area is identified for improvements. And based on this map, at some point, 100% coverage wouldn't be out of reach. But as we look at the project cost, this will take a long time to implement. In the next 5 years, we have about $20 million worth of improvement projects that include some type of bicycle facilities. This is projects that are in the capital work program that was reviewed with you recently and that we've been working on. And then there's another $35 million that would take us out to the 20-year horizon. And then there's still a lot of projects after that we're calling long-term projects that, based on current funding levels, that's, how long it would probably take to do all these projects. And so just going back to look at what can we accomplish in the next 5 years, this map here shows, if we move forward with the projects that we already kind of have in our plan for the next 5 years, that we start to get pretty good coverage with separated bicycle facilities. And when I say separated facilities, we're talking about primarily shared use paths, either off-road like the Brook Run Trail, or adjacent to the roadway in places where it makes sense, like the project we recently discussed, Mount Vernon at Tilly Mill, the Winter's Chapel path, and the paths that we're planning on Ashford Dunwoody Road. So that's a snapshot, and I think what we will do based on council's input and direction is put some of these maps up with our GIS to make them accessible and viewable, and kind of consolidate this all into one place. So I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you, Michael. Questions, comments? John, sorry.
Thank you, Michael. I'm excited about any bicycle improvements. Can you take a look at page 7 for me? I have questions on 2 different areas. Number 1, I'm seeing planned bike route for novice riders through neighborhoods. Interesting, I've never heard of that before, especially since one goes right through my neighborhood. Can you explain to me what those are and how those work and what would be the improvement that would actually...
Yes, let me go back to the slide before that where you can see it a little better. Let me share my screen again. Just a second, where? All right. Hold on, I'm having trouble getting back to the right screen. Well, there's while that's coming up, there's a the map shows what we started looking at to get to these service areas were bike lanes with no buffer. We call those just regular bike lanes, not a separated facility, are really going to be for the more experienced, more comfortable rider. And based on the direction of the council over the last year or so, we're moving more towards trying to get more bicycle facilities that are separated, that would be accessible to a larger range of riders. And so on our arterial and collector roads, those would be, a protected bike lane with a barrier in between that and the travel lane, or a cycle track, or a shared use path off the side of the road. And what that novice rider through neighborhoods is recognizing that where we're not going to actually put in a facility, we may have bike routes. And, a bike route on a road like Vermac would be for a more experienced rider, but there's a lot of neighborhood streets that connect through from one main road to another. And for those lower traffic streets that, even a less experienced rider may be able to use that to kind of connect the network, even without an actual facility on it. So we wouldn't actually be building any new infrastructure on those roads. They would probably be signed routes, maybe with some pavement markings. So that's what that means.
Okay. Can we take a look at the planned separated facility routes in the sense that they're not on main arterial roads? Namely, it looks like some go along the waterways and some go maybe on the Chattahoochee River feeder system into the waterwork ponds.
Yes, the ones that are shown off-road are either came out of the parks plan or the transportation plan, or both. Those are all facilities that have already been identified in an existing plan.
Okay, does the city of Dunwoody own that property? Do we control that property? Is it currently owned by the single-family residential that abut it?
Anything off-road that's not in a park would not be city property.
I just, historically, I remember the path plans along the power lines, which were actually owned by single-family residences, and the city plans on paper sort of upset the community in the sense that we were thinking about taking away somebody's backyard. So I just, by us approving this plan, I guess you say it's already in a plan somewhere else, and we really haven't dedicated any money and right of way, any long-term infrastructure to these ideas, but they're just ideas.
Yeah, I mean, those facilities they're in other plans that have already been approved. We're not necessarily looking for any approval tonight. If this is kind of the direction the council wants to go in, we may come back at some point and do a addendum or attachment to our transportation plan to reflect the latest recommendations. But most everything here, well, it's particularly the off-road facilities, that there's nothing new here that's not already in a plan.
Okay, I guess my only thought is that the residents may not be aware of our plans. Again, there's a lot of lines on a lot of maps, but I think some of these are in people's backyards. And before we move forward with any type of development thoughts or funding of any of this, is that we have more public input to make sure that the residents are well aware of what we're putting on paper moving forward. So I'm good with it for right now, because I guess you feel it's already out there. It's ideas, but we haven't funded it. We haven't had any long-term plans to put pavement on the ground. So I just want to make sure we're aware of those types of issues before we move forward with any type of funding. Thank you. No other questions. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Sorry, you're over the line.
That's okay. Hey, Michael, how you doing? I appreciate you putting this together. The work put into this. It's very helpful to see where we are, where we were, where we are, and hopefully where we're going. You know, the glaring thing that stands out to me and where we are is the complete lack of facilities on the eastern portion of the city. Hopefully that will begin to see some improvement with the Winters Chapel Trail construction, and that's why I've kind of been trying to prioritize some of the other projects in that area. When we were doing the CIP, looking at the path along Pillar Road as well. And I'll continue to push for those, because I think that's very important for that side of our city to have those facilities as well. We do have a lot of foot and bicycle traffic over there. I'm going to just emphasize once again, and I've been beating this drum for a while, but this is helpful. But I know that we, as a council, have identified connectivity, and in particular multi-use trails, as a priority. And I think, given that as a priority, I do think it deserves its own master plan for trails that would not only include the maps that you've included here, but also a roadmap of how to get there, both in funding and also having maybe protocols and procedures in place, so that when we do a roadway project or an intersection project or any other project for that matter, or if a developer comes before us looking for zoning, that I'm sorry to bring through this mask, that we are able to look at a document and see, hey, we have a plan here for a multi-use trail to come through this portion, so that we don't underbuild as part of, for example, if we do an intersection improvement and we only put a 5-foot sidewalk, or maybe the long-term vision was for a multi-use trail. I would, you know, that's kind of the overarching goal, to have a master plan, something that we can look at and not only the council and staff, but also the community as well and citizens, so that they can see where we're planning to go and they can provide their input as well. So I'm hoping that this is a big step in that direction. But I'm going to keep pushing for the full Megillah, the full plan, because I do believe that's important. But I do thank you for putting this together. This is very helpful, and it's a good starting point for us. So thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll just second what Tom said. I'd love to see a separate trail plan with a priority in there. And over at our retreat, we talked about 8 years out. Of course, we got the COVID thing now, but we like those 20 years, but let's see what's measurable. What can we actually get shovel ready, really prioritize and hit that? Let's see some stuff impactful. Just focus on that, 8 years out. Thank you.
Michael, so to Joe's point, I'm all about some windows that we can check boxes that we're getting things done. I like the idea of a master trail plan. I think it's actually critical because of the work going on 285 with the managed lanes and the need to connect up with our neighboring communities. And then finally, what is our process for removing things from an existing plan? So I suspect that there are things in plans that we now know. 10 years is a lifetime. There might be something in the transportation plan or something in the parks plan related to the trails or bikeways. So how does that work? And maybe remove is not exactly the right word, but change.
Yeah, I mean, they're living documents, I guess. And if there's something that is in a plan and we start to move forward with it and then, priorities change or decide not to do it, we kind of just move to the next project on the list. And, eventually the next time you do an update, you would update the plan to reflect, take that project out or put it to long range or do that to reflect the current thinking. But I mean, with all of our plans, we have so many projects available to choose from. If there's one that's no longer a priority, there's plenty of others to pick from to move on.
So like an example where we might have had Sheros for bikes and maybe now council thinks differently about that. How do we address that? When do we address that? That's just an example. It's not really specific, but how does that happen?
Well, we would just not, I mean, the plan doesn't get as specific as saying put Sheros on this road. So something like that, we would just not implement that. I think another good example and where the plan has some flexibility is that original transportation plan didn't necessarily say put bike lanes on Mount Vernon. It said put bike facilities. And then each project, we've kind of looked at what's best there and what the current thinking is. And now, we started out with some bike lanes where it made sense, but now we're moving more towards the side path. So, I mean, I think another part of this discussion, which we can bring back in another date, is this focus really on facilities and infrastructure. The other part of a plan is policy, and we can bring back some discussion items for that at a future date.
I think that's a good idea. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I'm sorry, there's just one other thing I just wanted to toss in that I forgot to mention when I couldn't breathe through my mask, but lack of oxygen going to the brain, I forgot one thing. One other thing that I didn't see in this report, but I know just some conversations that we've had, Michael, that it is something that we have looked at and considered, is I want to be sure whatever document we have is also showing connectivity to our neighbors, Sandy Springs, Preaching Corners. There are a lot of our neighbors that actually have multi-use trail plans that have started construction and have trails. And I want to make sure that whatever our vision is, our residents will have the ability to connect to those trails. So they'll be able to continue and go into neighboring cities and hook up with PAT 400 and get down to the Beltway or out to the Comet Trail through the various networks that are not in place yet, but everyone is looking at constructing, and I want to make sure that we're able to connect to that. So please make sure whatever we do also is in coordination with our neighboring cities.
Yes, it was shown on the proposed facility map. It was just in really small type, but we show connections to Sandy Springs at Spalding, also in the perimeter area, connections to Brookhaven and Chamblee, and then Peachtree Corners. We're even showing a connection up in the Winters Chapel area if the adjacent cities wanted to do it. You know, there's a new Riverlands master plan trail system that you may have heard about that ARC worked on. It's a path system along the Chattahoochee River through the metro area. So we're really not that far from that system either. So we do have those connections identified.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Michael.
All right.
Early.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. While Todd Brezzi gets online and gets his screen shared, I wanted to remind everyone sort of how we got here. The city adopted the Create Dunwoody plan in December of 2018 that laid out the sort of the big vision of arts and culture in Dunwoody. One of the 5 goals of that plan was public art. Then in the summer of 2019, we began working on a public mural project that was proposed by a resident. I'm sure most of you will remember that. It was the positive messages based on the "everything will be okay" sign. It became clear to us as we struggled to get that project off the ground that we lacked the basic policies to implement public art. So we hit pause on that project and began researching surrounding communities that have done public art successfully, cities that we are looking to emulate. All of them had a specific public art plan that laid out the specific mechanisms and decision-making processes regarding public art. But more importantly, it laid out a vision for the city. It sort of stated what citizens wanted out of public art and the types of public art that they wanted included in their plan. So we decided, as you also remember, in 2020, City Council placed money in my budget for arts and culture. So we earmarked some of that money to create an art master plan. Late in 2019, in December, we put out a request for qualifications. Todd Brezzi and his team were selected from 8 submittals. As you may remember, Todd's first visit to Dunwoody was March 9th. He luckily got on a plane March 12th because most of the rest of us went home on March 13th and didn't come back for a good 3 months or so, at least to the office. So we've been conducting this process virtually ever since. The good news is that virtual project management works, and it works quite well. Earlier today, you should have received the draft plan. We've put that on our website. It's very much a draft, a working draft, so we are still working on bits and pieces of it. And later this week, we're going to have a series of stakeholder meetings to gather more input on that plan. And to give you a little bit of idea of process, tonight is the discussion item. We are going to bring the project, the draft plan back to you on September 29th for consideration of adoption. We're going to follow this up very quickly on October 12th with a proposed ordinance. The plan talks about a lot of ways to do public art, but we're going to need an ordinance to actually put those processes in. So this is not the final stage of the process. It's really sort of the middle stage. Once this is adopted, we will then come back with an ordinance on the October, probably both October meetings, because the ordinance takes 2 reads. So I'm going to hand it over to Todd now. Todd's coming to us from outside of Philadelphia. Todd has worked all over the country on public art plans, and he's also worked within the Atlanta region. He's worked in Suwannee, Athens, Clark County, Atlanta, as well as Peachtree Corners. So I'll obviously be on the call for questions afterwards, but Todd, I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, just let me check. Michael, can I be heard? And is my screen showing properly?
Everything's perfect.
That's great. That's what rehearsing will do for you, right?
That's right.
First of all, thank you all very much for putting this on your agenda this evening. And Michael, thank you for that introduction. And thanks for virtual project management these past 5 or 6 months. Both you and Rosemary Watts have been instrumental to keeping us, we are pretty much on target, on track with the plan we laid out at the beginning. It's a real honor to have been selected to work on this project, and it's been a pleasure to get to know your community. As Michael said, I visited in March, and we're trying as hard as we can to get back and visit again before this is all said and done. But tonight, I have to talk to you remotely, and I'd like to talk with you or discuss with you what the public art implementation plan is, the process we've followed so far, and what the implementation plan envisions as far as public art in Dunwoody. 2 weeks when we come back, we'll discuss the policies and procedures that we recommend for Dunwoody to get there. And at that time, I'll talk more about topics like a public art commission, processes for approving public art, and funding. And as Michael said, for anyone who's listening in the audience, you can read a draft of the plan on the city's webpage. Just look up the Public Art Implementation Plan webpage on the City of Dunwoody's website. So let's get into it. As Michael said, Michael laid out really well the background as to why we're doing this. And it's important to note that one of the key recommendations of the Create Dunwoody Arts and Culture Plan was to enliven the public realm with more visual art installations and performance art pieces, ranging from temporary exhibits to a permanent city-owned collection that inspire and engage passersby and are reflective of the character of the city. And that plan called for several key actions: create a public art committee, develop guidelines for selecting and placing public art, developing a public art map with locations for potential projects, look for consistent funding for public art, and make sure everything that's done is reflective of the character of Dunwoody. So this project, this implementation plan, which implements those recommendations, is really meant to answer several basic questions. What does public art mean in Dunwoody? Where does public art belong in Dunwoody? How can public art be approved? And how can public art be funded? This is the path we've followed over the last 6 months. Fortunately, I was able to conduct lots of face-to-face meetings when I visited in March. I met with all of you individually, I believe, or most of you, and then some of you I interviewed on the telephone. And we had 438 responses to a public survey, which is pretty remarkable for a city of the size of Dunwoody. We've also had extensive consultation via telephone interviews and web-based meetings since then. We've worked with an external advisory committee that's met numerous times and consulted regularly with city department heads in reporting on our findings and shaping up the recommendations of this implementation plan. Put another way, these are the key questions the public art plan, any kind of public art plan, has to answer. And Michael really pinpointed something important. Even though at the end of the day, you do need to get to an ordinance, you need to get the policies and procedures, processes for getting things done, it really starts with the big picture. How do you want public art to impact your city? Knowing that, what are your goals? What are the accomplishments that you should be reaching for? Knowing that, where are your opportunities? Where can you look to do projects that best meet your goals? And what are the short-term and long-term priorities that you have? That's when you can then get into talking about the process, how things work, and the tools you need to get to where you want to go. So today we'll start with the bigger picture, what you'd like to accomplish, what your opportunities are, and that will help set the stage for further discussion of how you get there. What I really like about public art planning is that every plan is different. Every plan reflects the specific identity of the place it's created for and reflects the vision and goals that community has for itself. So that's why I think it's important to talk for a minute about what we learned from our research and engagement process. There's much I could say about Dunwoody itself, what I've learned about it, what makes it a unique community. And I'll do that in a moment when I talk about themes for public art. What's important to note at this point is where in the city people think public art is most appropriate and what types of public art they'd like to see. So as you can see here, generally people would like to see public art in the places that have some kind of shared role in the city. Mixed use areas, commercial areas, shopping areas, parks, places where people come together and where other kinds of civic activities happen. In terms of the kind of art people would like to see, there's a strong interest in things that are functional, that have a purpose, that support the activity that occurs there. Things that support the streetscape, wayfinding, landscaping, that support landscape plantings, as well as sculpture, sculpture that has a civic voice, sculpture that's playful. There's also a strong interest in projects that are generated, that are small, fast, and generated by people in the community, as well as a hope that one day Dunwoody will be able to accomplish a large visionary project as well. So when I talk about opportunities for public art, I will show how these ideas translate into things you can specifically do. These are some of the ideas that also came out of our research and engagement. There's a desire for the approach to public art in Dunwoody to be cohesive, while respecting that different parts of the city have a different look and feel and support different kinds of activities. The themes that come up most frequently have to do with coming together, really, community, unity, connectivity. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The most interesting aspect of Dunwoody to consider, rather unique, are the events that occur, as well as its history. Both of those are connected to the city's sense of tradition. And again, build on homegrown activities, assets, resources, and events. These are priorities people have for the kinds of projects that should be done here. So now let me talk about each of these issues. Why public art's important to Dunwoody, what types of art people would like to see, and where your best opportunities for projects are. Here's why public art is important to Dunwoody. And if you ever, I have to say as an aside, if you ever doubt how well Zoom can work, this was written by about 8 people in a Zoom meeting using the conversation in the chat boxes, and it worked splendidly to hammer out this language. I think there's a goal, that a realization that since Dunwoody's been incorporated, it's reached a certain level of accomplishment, and now it's thinking about how to get to the next level. And public art can be one of the things that it takes on. And as I believe one of the council members said a little earlier in this meeting, one of the big themes and priorities of the city right now is connectivity. So public art can play a role in helping to support the vision of connectivity, and also simply to support Dunwoody's sense of spirit by being colorful, fun, and explorable. These are some of the more specific goals that we learned about through our engagement process. There's a very strong emphasis in Dunwoody in public art that improves how the city looks and feels. There's a strong interest in public art that really connects with people because it's engaging, that it makes them want to stay in the city longer if they work here, to come back and visit, to go someplace new, that add to a sense that there's something to be discovered if you explore the city. There's a hope that public art can change perceptions of the city, that tap into the growing creative energy that people see and make that part of its identity. And as always, Dunwoody, a friendly place, wants to make sure that it conveys its pride and is welcoming to people who visit. Now, it's not the job of a public art implementation plan to tell artists exactly what to do. We want a red sculpture here and we want a horse sculpture there. We'd like to be surprised by the creative ideas that artists can bring. But it's important to give artists a starting point for how they're going to work in a community, to let them know what's important about the place where they're working, to let them know what people care about, and to let them know how to start conversations with people who live and work there. So the first important guidance this plan offers is themes that try to explain what Dunwoody's all about. And that's what the ideas on this slide express. A place that has a small town feel in a very metropolitan region. A place where people have a tradition of working together, of pulling together to accomplish things to better the community. Dunwoody, like many of the areas around it, is increasingly diverse. It has a strong tradition, a community-based tradition of important festivals that really mark the passage of each year and connect people to the city. Family and neighborhood are really front and center in Dunwoody. And it's a place that's in transition. We all know its historical roots, and it has emerged over several phases of life to the place it's become now. The next guidance the plan offers is a mapping of areas where public art is most appropriate, and guidelines and descriptions of public art types that would be most appropriate for each of those areas. The areas on this map generally follow the comprehensive plan designations for the areas of the city that are mixed use or non-residential: Dunwoody Village, Brook Run Park, Perimeter Center, Georgetown, Mount Vernon, Winners Chapel, and the Institutional District. And for each of these areas of the city, the plan lists the types of public art that people would most like to see in those areas based on our survey and interviews. This list of types would be used to give guidance to artists who are working on projects in those areas and projects the city commissions, or to review other proposals for locating public art in these areas. The plan next describes specific opportunity for public art projects, and it divides them into categories depending on who initiates the projects. So there are some projects the city will commission on its own because they relate to things the city builds. There are some projects the city will work on with other organizations, such as the PCIDS. And there are some projects that will be initiated independently, hopefully through a nonprofit organization that takes on the role of moving public art projects forward. And there are two overarching categories of projects: creative activations and game changers, that I'll talk about a little more later. Overall, these categories reflect a real philosophical underpinning of this plan. The goal really of the city is to set up a framework that will allow and encourage others to take on public art projects. That will establish a process for reviewing things, but then for the most part, get out of the way. The key is to allow for flexibility for the use of private and community resources while providing for accountability and professionalism for the use of city resources. So first, the projects that are related to what the city builds. I was fascinated by the last presentation on shared use infrastructure, shared use trails, because that's a key opportunity for Dunwoody. These are important connective corridors. Artworks here could be incorporated into new construction or located along existing trails. Our research has turned up a strong interest for artworks that are functional, such as this seating on a trail in Johns Creek, or perhaps wayfinding type projects. There's an interesting opportunity to develop a type of project, such as these ground murals that repeat themselves throughout the city, unfolding like a story you can read as you move around, helping to achieve the goal of connectivity. Dunwoody should always keep a lookout for future construction projects and consider how public art can enrich them. One project in the pipeline is Perimeter Park East and Perimeter Center. This will connect to the Dunwoody multi-use trail and will also feature a plaza according to its master plan. The project in this picture, which is in Greensboro, offers a shady oasis along a trail downtown. It's an approach Dunwoody might want to look at for enhancing a park with public art. The city's parks master plan also indicates that a splash pad will be added to Brook Run Park one day. That's also an opportunity for a feature that is designed by an artist, like this sculpture in a splash pad in Reston, Virginia, which also serves as a fountain that sprays water on the splash pad. A second group of projects that could come about is city partnerships with other agencies. As part of its improvements to I-285, GDOT will be building several new bridges that connect to Dunwoody. These are once-in-generation opportunities for Dunwoody to put its best face forward to the region, and this could be done through enhanced design and/or public art. Though these bridges are a long way off, decisions about them are being made now. And so it's an effort that should begin quickly and should involve both the PCIDS and GDOT, as well as the city. The MARTA station is one of Dunwoody's greatest transportation assets, but not especially easy to find or friendly to look at. The PCIDS already has a number of ideas for sprucing up the station. They've already issued a call for artists to do a mural there, particularly the parking garages. projects that would also involve MARTA. Here's an example of a relatively inexpensive way to dress up the exterior of a garage, as well as a vivid way to improve the interior spaces of a garage. Discover Dunwoody has come up with a very clever gateway plan to mark major entries with the city's name and playful features. Public art might offer different kinds of opportunities for gateway locations as well. Duluth, for example, has figured out how to use murals as gateway for both its downtown and for the city overall. Another type of partnership could be with private developers. Some of the cities in your region are beginning to experiment with approaches to do this. When I talk with you next time, I'll talk about a strategy Dunwoody can use to encourage developers to include public art in their projects when they're building in areas of the city that I highlighted earlier. Again, the priority would be on artworks that improve the functioning of these areas and support the character of these areas. This project, for example, marks the transition between a public streetscape and an outdoor dining plaza. This project provides bicycle infrastructure and supports the landscape planning strategy for a street in Boston. The plan will also make recommendations about how to encourage more artwork, primarily murals, inside of businesses like coffee shops and restaurants. This is a great way for young local artists to get commissions and to really create the sense that the city has an artful feel both inside and out. Finally, the plan identifies what are called community partnership projects. That's because these projects don't really involve public construction and can therefore be done by community organizations and businesses based on their own priorities and the resources and opportunities they see. One category is murals, and the plan flags a number of possibility for locations where murals could be installed. The plan also flags potential locations for sculptures, some locations that exist now, and others that are related to open spaces recommended in the comprehensive plan and other planning documents. These can include what we call civic sculpture, artworks that are welcoming and convey the spirit of the city, as well as functional sculptures, like this garden that is surrounded by a planter that is faced with ceramic tiles. The two last categories I mentioned were creative activations and game changers. Creative activations are meant to be very small scale, quick, temporary projects that can be created by almost anybody. They really come in the spirit of what's often called creative placemaking. It could include visual artworks as well as site-specific performances and events. These would be managed within a framework that focuses groups of projects around specific goals and times and places. So for example, around the time of the art fair or lemonade days, there might be a number of creative activations that are commissioned to help people celebrate those events. And the idea would be really to focus on people who live, work, or have businesses or go to school in Dunwoody so that these projects really express the city's creative resources. And here are the type of things that we could imagine. Sidewalk hopscotch projects. This was part of a set of projects I helped commission in Troy, New York, that took up the issue of getting people to walk around downtown and discover more of the things there. So creating sidewalk art like this gave people a reason to walk around. This is from New York City, where they have a small program for enhancing along public streets and trails, infrastructure like these barriers. This is in Arlington, Virginia, an area very much like the PCIDS, where temporary artworks have been commissioned to help spruce up some of the infrastructure that's been built. This was in Alpharetta, a short-term historical exhibition where an artist created reprinted historic photography and pasted them on various buildings downtown. These are the type of projects we might imagine through creative activations. On the other side of the coin, the plan suggests that Dunwoody could consider what we call a game changer project. This would be a very long-term aspirational project that could take several years to plan and fund and complete. It could take a number of forms. It could build on the momentum of an established community event. It could be a major artwork or a major temporary artwork that involves the whole community. It could be an iconic piece of art as well. And it would have to be in a location that is highly visible and highly visited. Examples include this project, which appears each year at the Minnesota State Fair and can now be shown in other cities as well, called the Giant Sing-Along. It's a community gathering project where people come and sing in public at like a big karaoke festival. This was a project that was commissioned in Atlanta by one of the art museums there. These playful tops, in a way, these spinning tops that people can get in and spin around all around Midtown Atlanta, and have since been displayed in other cities like Houston. This is an example of a temporary project that could come to town for a few months, perhaps in collaboration with a museum or another organization, and generate lively public activity. Another type of aspirational project is the iconic sculpture. This was commissioned by Dallas's light rail line, its equivalent of MARTA, when it extended its line to a artsy neighborhood called Deep Ellum. It's called Traveling Man. So that's a picture of what this implementation plan envisions for where Dunwoody could move with public art. A variety of projects that suit the community's interest in works that are functional and works that reflect the spirit of the city, that are both small and fast and can be experienced quickly in the city, as well as long-term aspirational works. Projects that some of which can be done by the city, but many of which would be launched by other organizations in the city with a mix of public and private resources. Next time I present to you, we'll talk more about the mechanisms the city can use to get there, how a public art committee can be established and provide a governance role, what types of funding the city might look to, and what types of processes it might use to approve public and private artwork in public and private spaces. With that, I'll turn it back to Michael and be happy to entertain questions and discussion.
Okay.
Can we stop share? There we
Yep.
go. Anyone?
This is just fascinating, like the process and where we can go and the different possibilities. Well done, thank you.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, it's very exciting, and one of the things that we're already getting a little taste of, like we had the picture of the picnic tables throughout Dunwoody. So we're getting a little taste of what can happen to our picnic table project. So this is very exciting, yes.
I had that on my cover slide, and what's interesting is when you do projects like that, again, that's sort of a creative activation, right? And when you do that, you find out where all the creative energy in your city really is. You know, people you wouldn't imagine come out of the woodwork to start doing these things, and you realize what you've got in your community. So I think it was a really great, step towards moving in this direction.
Anybody else? Joe? Oh, just thumbs up. Okay. Yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation, and look forward to the we'll talk about implementation and where we go from here and that kind of thing, which Michael, I presume is coming, correct?
Yes.
Anybody else? All right, thank y'all.
All right. See you in 2 weeks.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, Ginger, it's time for public comment. I don't think we have any public.
We do have Sharon Frank on the call, and she was one of the ones that had signed up previously.
That's fine. Ms. Frank, you have 3 minutes.
You should be able to unmute yourself and speak at this time, ma'am.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I live at 5049 Trail Ridge Way, which is the westernmost edge of the village. I've lived here for 39 plus years, and the buffer has been a mainstay since the 70s. I live with dumpsters emptied, yelling employees from the shops, barking, whining, snarling, yelping dogs, and those employees yelling, "Shut up, be quiet." It's extremely noisy. I have come to know that there have been over 67, that's 67 dogs at Cram, at Camp Runamut. And can you just imagine the racket of that? A weekend day is no longer a day that you can sit outside on the screen porch and enjoy. It is a constant noise. With the dumpsters early in the morning, it's the pounding, the slamming of it occurring for quite a while, because when you think about all the dumpsters at the shops of Dunwoody, you can hear every single one. The true canopy and density are a huge lift to my spirits and my physicality each day, and that's every day. I had a 9-point buck with 3 additional furry spikes resting in my bushes while his mate was enjoying the foliage. I opened up my bathroom window. I took pictures. I wish I could show them to you. He was majestic. I do not want to even imagine these events changing. I see eagles, hawks, hummingbirds. The stream is essential for us to protect our homes at the back of the shops of Dunwoody from flooding beyond the 75-foot stream buffer. This essential buffer affords a decrease in offensive sounds from what we talked about, dumpsters, barking dogs, and the traffic on Chambly Dunwoody. Please.
30 seconds remaining.
Ma'am?
There are 30 seconds remaining.
Okay, thank you. Please maintain the planned buffer of 130 plus 20 feet. Please, city staff and council, take the time to maintain the current zoning and standing history of the buffer intact. We want to meet with mayor and council and staff to kindle this and maintain the slush wooded buffer. I am passionately stating the necessity to maintain.
I apologize. The 3 minutes has ended.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. Is that it, Ginger?
If anyone else would like to speak in public comment, please raise your hand in the app. I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Thank you. City manager comments, Eric?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. We will need an executive session for personnel after the meeting, but I'm also going to go into the bi-weekly report. Couple of highlights in the report. We have in Public Works, the Chambly Dunwoody at Spalding intersection, Atlanta Gas Light has completed their relocation. The Georgia Power portion has been delayed due to the Georgia Power and Southern Company sending their resources to Louisiana for the hurricane response. We also held the pre-bid meeting for this project, for the project itself, the road work, on last Friday. Also, the Peeler Road sidewalk, Construction 57, which is the company doing the work, has barrels and traffic control preparation for storm pipe installation beginning this week. The Dunwoody Club Drive pavement reconstruction is planning to start removing asphalt this week, pending the weather. Also, we have, we're planning a virtual public meeting later this month for Mount Vernon Road, corridor improvements between Corners Drive and Mount Vernon Place. And just as kind of a little fact on, we mentioned stormwater last month because of the heavy rains we had in August. Just as a stat, we responded to 78 requests in August, and in 2019, there were 86 requests for the whole year. So you can see how that was kind of a heavy month there. Police, the staff has completed the What is Suspicious pamphlet. Copies are being printed and will be placed on our website very soon. Our LPR cameras, which are the license plate readers, are doing an excellent job on helping to solve crimes in the area. We do have one officer that's currently out due to COVID-19. Parks Department, the Waterford and Perimeter Center East Park demolition is now finalized. Also the new field lighting at our Brook Run Peachtree Charter Middle School field they're complete. The Waterford and Windward Hollow tennis court repair has been issued a notice to proceed to begin that work. In community development, just another stat, we had 120 building inspections completed over the last 3 weeks. We also have tomorrow night is the Roberts Drive rezoning case is coming back to the Planning Commission. And then economic development, one of their special projects right now is the picnic table project, very successful, highly received project. We also have, they're going to be talking a little bit more about the Georgetown commercial site for the Urban Redevelopment Agency to discuss options for marketing that site with a broker. Economic activity highlight, which is the Hyatt Place Hotel and 1224 opened over the Labor Day weekend. And then we have, just as another announcement on the 2020 census, on the 29th of the month, there's gonna be a Dunwoody stop on the DeKalb Census Caravan at the Georgetown Kroger. So everybody, please be sure you've completed those forms for the census count. Finance continues to do their work on the 2021 operational and capital improvements budget for next year. And then under municipal court, just a few more stats to conclude with. We've disposed of over 150 cases since last and reset 28 cases. So we're really getting through the backlog by holding 6 sessions per week to get everybody caught up. There are an additional 4 court dates have been added for November and December, and a date has been set for the court amnesty on Tuesday, November 3rd for 2 sessions at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. So hopefully those will be early sessions to on the 3rd of November. The last piece of information is we are, for employees and dependents, just as a reminder that for everybody to get their flu shot, that'll be coming up later this month. But with that, I'm glad, as well as all the staff that's on the call, to answer any questions that y'all may have.
Does anybody have any questions for Eric? I don't see any. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
Council comments?
I'd like to just expand briefly on one of the items that Eric mentioned, and that's the license plate reader system that we have that ties in with Chamblee, Sandy Springs, Brookhaven. There was a fairly high profile incident in Chamblee where you had a stranger kidnapping of a toddler, infant, which is a really, really scary thing, that was resolved fairly quickly. Well, that got resolved fairly quickly as a direct result of that license plate reader system. I think that's a big win. And I just wanted to highlight that. I think that's really a great thing.
Everyone do your census. If for some reason you have had trouble doing it, I met someone at the farmer's market that was struggling, please send one of us an email and we can connect you with the proper resources. Dunwoody's numbers have gone slightly up, but we are still below our 2010 reporting. So we only have a few more weeks, so let's continue on. Please tell your friends. And with that, I need a motion for executive session for personnel, please.
Move to exit for executive session for personnel.
Second. Moved by Jim, second by Pam. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We will be back.
Are we back?
We're back.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Jim. Second by Pam. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Thank you all for watching.